Good morning. It's Wednesday, July 23rd. I'm Jim Check with Naomi. With me, Andrea Jensenberg, sitting in for the vacationing Ian Burns, who's back next Monday.
Back next Monday.
There you go. Beautiful day in the Okanagan. Beautiful, absolutely beautiful day in the Okanagan. You ready to get going? We had lots to talk about. We had a lot, actually, in the really big show.
It is a really big show today.
Trump making deals. No deal for Canada yet, though. Canadians put work for the government first. All eyes on sentencings for Freedom Convoy leaders. Trump making trade deals. A tale of two nations, and voices get louder to defund the CBC. All that and a lot more on the really big show.
Good morning.
Good morning. Let's get right into it. And we're going to start off with what are Canadians actually working for the government first? Because now 42% of their income is taxes. That's for the average family in Canada now.
We're working till, what is it, June 2nd to pay the government for most people?
Yeah, it's just like, and we seem to be giving money out everywhere. If we look at that, the average Canadian family now spends 42.3% of their income on taxes last year, more than housing, food, and clothing combined. I'm getting that chart down. Look at that.
And, you know, I'm not against taxation, but when the rates are this high, like Scandinavian countries, you expect a better quality of life.
Well, what we do is get is like more taxes. It seems like more taxes, more regulation, more taxes,
and
more
cost
regulation.
of living is higher as well.
And at some point, you know, that they're talking about even more taxes. And I just don't know if Canadians can bear the burden of all this taxation. And meanwhile, money is being shipped overseas to different causes. We'll talk about some of that later. We maybe have to be at the begging bowl soon if we're going to continue down this road, though. I did that interview yesterday with MNP and saying that 3 in 5 British Columbians are worried that they can't even make their debt payments.
Bleak.
Not a good place to be here in Canada. We're going to play this small clip here from CTV, though. Let's play this clip here.
Hearing for Freedom Convoy organizers Tamara Leach and Chris Barber is set to begin this morning. 2 days have been set aside for the Crown and Defence to present their submissions. Now, Leach and Barber were both convicted of mischief in April. The Crown's looking for a 7-year prison sentence for Leach and 8 years for Barber, who was also convicted of disobeying a court order by encouraging protest participants to keep honking their truck horns. The Freedom Convoy saw hundreds of trucks and thousands of people occupying the streets of downtown Ottawa for 3 weeks in the winter of 2022. All in protest of COVID-19 public health measures.
We also have this clip here from John Carpay from the Justice Center for Constitutional Freedoms. I interviewed John yesterday, and we talked about the sentencing that's going to happen over the hearing and sentence is going to happen over the next couple of days here. And here's a clip from John Carpay talking about the sentencing for the 2 Freedom Convoy leaders.
Crown prosecutors in Ottawa are seeking an 8-year jail sentence for Chris Barber over his involvement in the peaceful Freedom Convoy protest that took place in Ottawa in 2022. The court is going to hear submissions from Crown prosecutors and from Chris Barber's lawyer on Wednesday, July 23rd and Thursday, July 24th. Even though this protest went on for 3 weeks, there was no vandalism, there was no violence, there was no uttering threats, there were no cars set on fire, there were no buildings set on fire. And it certainly did inconvenience some residents in Ottawa, but the protest would have ended a lot sooner if the Prime Minister had been willing to meet with the leaders and sit down with them and talk. I'm very grateful on behalf of the Justice Centre, on behalf of Chris Barber, for all of the support these last 3 years. The Justice Centre is paying for Chris Barber's legal defense. Thanks for your donations, and please continue to donate as we await the court's decision.
They're looking for 8 years for mischief.
Honking your horn and noise violations, basically, and parking violations. And here's a from Chrystia Friedland's own handwriting here. This is what she had wrote in there.
Well, she was trying to label the truckers as terrorists was her recommendation.
Yeah. So we need a playbook. You need to designate this group as a terrorist group and seize the assets and imprison them. That was the reaction from the Liberal government on these people that were there protesting COVID-19 mandates.
Very
label them as terrorists. I mean, terrorists that are honking hard. And we look at some of the other protests that go on these days, and
Well,
they're
especially in
burning
the
things
States,
down and
yeah.
everything, and they're not being labeled as a terrorist. And then
Well,
Pierre
terrorism
Poilievre
is just becoming a subjective word in many ways.
Pierre Poilievre has also called for this, for people to be, for the courts to be reasonable with Tamara Lich and Chris Barber.
Well, yeah, the seizing of funds is just quite dystopic. No matter what you think about the truckers, the vaccines, COVID, do you want the government to be able to reach into your bank account is the question.
Larry Brock, another MP here, says this is in our prison system. Saskatchewan Penn staff seize $150,000 worth of meth. There's that much meth in the prison system. Wow. It's not just a security failure, he says. It's what happens when Liberals lose control of the justice system. But it seems like, I recommend people go watch the interview I did with John Carpe yesterday. He goes through it, and it just seems to be an uneven distribution of justice here for two people charged as the Freedom Convoy leaders, and some of the other cases in Canada where there seems to be so much leniency.
Well, you see that man last week who was arrested, but we'd known him since 2007, that drug guy.
Yeah. And then we're going to talk. Let's talk about the tariffs and the trade talk and all that stuff. First, we're going to play a clip here from CTV as well. Here, let's play this clip.
Now, we heard some comments from Alberta Premier Danielle Smith today on some legislation she wants repealed. Let's take a listen.
He would demonstrate his great support if he would repeal or substantially revise the 9 bad laws that are impacting our investment climate. He hasn't done that yet, but as I've said, we're giving him some time to get into the role. He's got a new legislative session starting up in September, and we'll have a better idea of what kind of revisions he's going to make then.
So, Vashi, is that likely to happen?
Oh, another good question, Renee. I'm not sure is the honest truth, and that is because the legislation that...
You can go watch that full clip on CTV if you want. She's calling for those 9 bad laws to be repealed, as is Scott Moe and Doug Ford. And they signed that MOU. We talked about that yesterday. They signed that MOU between those 3 provinces. And Mark Carney is kind of positioning Canadians to lower their expectations for a deal with Trump. We're going to talk a little bit later with Trump, because Trump made a couple of big deals yesterday, and none of them with Canada so far. But he's kind of like really lowering the expectations what Canadians can expect in a trade deal with.
Well, and he's
the US.
also kind of reneging on that day, the trade deadline.
The August 1st. Yeah.
That we might not even have a deal by August 1st. This instability and unknown may continue.
And we got another clip here to play from Doug Ford.
From CBC News. This is a question for all of you. You've spoken a lot about using, getting our resources to other markets, but as Danielle Smith pointed out, our oil currently runs through the United States to Ontario. Michigan threatened to cut that off a couple of years ago. Trump could cut it off for political reasons. Do we need to build a pipeline from Alberta to Ontario on Canadian soil, regardless of whether there's a proponent or not for national security reasons?
Well, I believe so. My good friend, the governor of Michigan, and she's known her from day one, constantly threatens to cut off Line 5. That would basically shut down our airport, shut down a big part of Ontario, and we can't chance it any longer. We need to be independent. We need a pipeline going to southwestern Ontario to one of the refineries and be self-reliant. We can't rely on the Americans anymore. As simple as that. I love the Americans, by the way. I love the people. Love the elected officials, except one. And that's it. So yes, we have to start diversifying our trade around the globe. And as
I think this clip kind of highlights why we have no leverage in these negotiations with the states. We are still completely reliant.
And it's just amazing that, from a national security standpoint, why we wouldn't have completed that pipeline a long time ago, right? It puts us, and we talk about oil all the time, Western Canadian Select sells at a discount because we have really only one customer to sell to, the Americans, because the pipeline that goes south, and we don't even have a pipeline that goes out to the east, and yet there seems to be reluctance by several of the provinces and the Liberal government over the years to build that pipeline. So,
and it's interesting that the existing pipeline does travel through the states. Where's the logic there?
It'll be interesting to see what happens with what Danielle Smith, Scott Moe, and Doug Ford are pushing there if they repeal those 9 laws here and if we get some action here. Here's Mark Carney, though, talking about they're going to open up an office for federal mega projects here. So let's listen to him.
Our new federal major projects office will be open by Labor Day, providing a single point of contact for governments, proponents, and communities for proposals. With that is this shift in attitude of the federal government towards major new projects from why to how. Why build to how to build and how to work together in order to build.
Well, there's some
Again, lots
there.
of talk, but we need to see where the rubber meets the road and they actually announce a pipeline being built. I mean, there's still a lot of just talk. And here's another clip from Mark Carney.
But yeah, walk the walk.
Is it to get a deal by August 1st?
Well, that depends. I mean, there's 2 sides to a deal. We will, obviously, we're working on behalf of Canadians, and we will agree a deal if there's one on the table that is in the best interest of Canadians, just as the United States will do in the look for the best interests of the U.S. There have been a series of discussions. Senior ministers have been in Washington. They'll be returning. Mr. LeBlanc, for example, will be in Washington for the balance of the week, as will be my chief of staff, other officials, for those discussions. But, you know, they're complex negotiations, and we'll use all the time that's necessary and agree something that's in the interests of Canadians, if that's available.
If that's available.
There you go. So you're kind of like talking it down a little bit there. So, you know, not much expectations there for a deal by August 1st. Chrystia Freeland put out a tweet there, and she said that there was a deal signed with Ontario, BC, the Yukon, we'll talk about it later, in Northwest Territories, and none of it signed a deal to boost internal trade and improve labor mobility and tear down long-standing barriers, and a lot of that has to do with alcohol. But she didn't do anything for the Doug Ford one, though. The Doug Ford, Daniel Smith, and Scott Moe, which is kind of interesting to see. And then David Eby was asked why the pipeline wasn't going to the West Coast. And here's David Eby's reaction to, like, you know, like we talked about it yesterday, why was David Eby not in that discussion with Daniel Smith, Scott Moe, and getting a pipeline to the West Coast? And here's David Eby's response.
Hello, Premier Eby. Michael Serapi with CPAC. Earlier today, we saw your colleagues from Saskatchewan, Alberta, and Ontario announce a memorandum of understanding to work towards energy corridors, pipelines. And in that news conference, both the premiers of Saskatchewan and Alberta talked about the northern BC coast, saying it presents the best opportunity to get oil to global markets. And they also called for, once again, the dropping of a number of regulations. That includes the tanker ban off the BC coast. I'm wondering, given that this is the 3rd time that the premiers, the first ministers have come together, whether you are now more open to dropping that ban, giving the support towards that, and exploring the possibility of a pipeline to the BC coast up north.
Well, I mean, let's look at what's happening in BC's north around energy. We have the first shipment of LNG from BC's coast. It will make a material difference in Canada's GDP, the largest private sector investment in Canadian history. The proponents are looking at a second phase right now. In terms of traditional energy projects, we also have Cedar LNG and Silism's LNG that are reaching final investment decision or are in construction. So there are major energy projects that are happening that will also benefit Alberta in BC's north. For the pipeline project that Premier Smith is a great enthusiast of, a heavy oil pipeline project, there is no project, there is no proponent, there is no private sector money involved at all that I'm aware of. When Premier Smith crosses those obvious hurdles to get a project done, then let's have those conversations. But to be blunt, we have major projects that are moving ahead, and that's where our focus is.
But would it be easier to find an investor if the BC government were open to actually letting that pipeline go to the BC northern coast?
Well, we own a heavy oil pipeline right now as Canadians that goes to the BC coast. It's the Trans Mountain Pipeline Project. It's up for sale. The federal government can't sell it. The major pipeline proponents that one would expect to be participating in the north are not. And so I think there's a reason for that. I think there's other interest around investment in British Columbia and Alberta. We're supportive. If Premier Smith can cross that hurdle of identifying a proponent and an actual project, then let's have that conversation. But in the meantime, we're encouraging the federal government, and for ourselves, the focus is on projects with proponents that are ready to go, that are through environmental assessment. And if we do that, we can deliver some really big projects for Canada. BC will be the economic engine, frankly, of the new economy that we're building here in Canada because of our port access to markets, the resources we have, and we're going to facilitate access for other provinces too, to get to those markets just as we always have.
Well, he's right about one thing. BC has the port. But those 9 laws are in the way for anybody willing to invest right now.
His rhetoric here is reminiscent of the BC Ferries deal, where he wants people to spend all this money making a plan, creating these things, which cost millions and millions of dollars.
Billions.
And are you going to waste that money if you're not even sure you're going to have British Columbia's cooperation?
There you go. Doug Ford is talking up the Prime Minister. Yeah, they had a late night visit there. I don't know, until past midnight, I guess. I'm going to play a little clip here from Doug Ford talking up the Prime Minister.
Okay, so full disclosure, Prime Minister stayed at my place. We had dinner. We were up till 12:30 at night, chatting in front of the fireplace, solving all the world's problems.
And you've got a very nice small chalet.
Yeah. I have a little shack up down the street there. And do you know what it is? Yeah, I'm telling you, I haven't known him for long, but the Prime Minister is the most humble person you'd ever want to meet. Let me just give you a little background. Now you got me on a roll here. Okay, the Prime Minister was a Goldman Sachs guy. He worked on Bay Street. He was the chair of Brookfield, which I think is close to $1 trillion fund. Chair of Bloomberg, everyone knows Bloomberg. Bank of Canada governor, Bank of England governor. He has never said that in his entire time I've known him. He doesn't do that. He's very humble.
There's Doug Ford blowing smoke.
Well, I'm optimistic, you know.
I'm optimistic as well. Done. Let's see something happen, though. Let's see something has to actually happen.
Catch
here,
more flies with honey.
There you go. And then Doug Ford also saying that Trump will roll us over like a cement truck there. So he wants to match the tariffs, but tariffs. I mean, this has been said by so many people, economists and all that. Putting tariffs on, counter tariffs actually hurts the Canadian consumer, not the other way around. So tariffs that Trump puts on actually hurts American consumers. So there's a lot of people saying, whoa, let's not get carried away here with this tit for tat kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm. But it also, doesn't it, the state's tariffs, it punishes our exports.
That's correct, yeah. And then here's Melanie Jolie. She's always got to be in a photo op there. So she's always. This is the thing with a lot of the Liberals. They don't get a lot done, but they do a lot of photo ops. So here just to show you, like, always a pleasure to reconnect with a former counterpart and friend. Okay, great. Well, what does that mean? And how many more tax dollars do Canadians have to pay for these photo ops? The power suit. There you go. And then again, we talked about this yesterday too. Canadians buying record high amounts of U.S. securities, including treasuries, and that, like the government tells us to invest in Canada and stuff like that, including David Eby made that investment in Chinese, the shipyards there to build BC ferries. So again, a lot of talk, and the actions are different than the talk, right? And also Mark Carney's 93% or more of his assets are in the United States, as well as he moved the headquarters to New York.
That's Brookfield.
That's right. And then that by-election, this is almost like craziness here. This by-election now is 152 candidates, most of them with the same financial agent, and this is where CBC actually gave some time to these people in this longest protest ballot stuff. And then Pierre Poilievre has asked the Liberal government to do something about it. We'll see if they do something about it. But what a waste of Canadian taxpayer dollars, and it just makes a mockery of the election. And then Canada's free healthcare strikes again. A man was at the hospital for an appointment, started having classic signs of a heart attack. He's brought to ER and had to wait 12 hours while sweating profusely and throwing up. And the doctor told him, "You're lucky you didn't fall asleep. You probably would have died."
Devastating. You hear stories like this every day right now, and what are we doing to solve this crisis? If anything, we're just making it worse.
We keep bragging that we have free healthcare. The problem is it's hard to access.
Yeah, I've heard a lot of people start calling it sick care now.
Yeah, there you go. And then this is the tale of two nations. This thing is, so Trump came in the United States, and there's a bunch of service people that were fired in the U.S. military and a bunch that were fired here in the Canadian military. The U.S. military...
For refusing vaccines.
That's correct. The U.S. military has hired back all the soldiers and even provided them back pay for refusing the vaccine. Not so in Canada here. They can't even get here. This is the charter challenge of vaccine mandates imposed by the Chief of Defense Staff General William Eyre is dismissed by the federal court. This may seem harsh outcome to the plaintiff, but as a result that is compelled by the law. And that charter challenge of vaccine mandates, incomplete figures show nearly 1,600 soldiers, sailors, and aircrew resign or discharge or face discipline for defying COVID orders.
And again, it's not really what you think about the issue, it's the principle.
And it's just odd here in the United States, they've reinstated all the service people and given them back pay. Here in Canada, not so much, right?
Interesting story to follow.
There you go. And it says there in the story there too that 131 military members did suffer adverse effects from taking the COVID shots. But the majority of these reported adverse effects were minor and self-resolving in nature. So
it'd be interesting to hear how great a majority.
And that's that same group that was looking after the vaccine harms. They were watching Netflix and having parties. We covered that story just a while ago too, right? And here it is. Canadians are working more and more for the government, more than anything else. 42.3% of your earnings are going towards the government. And what do they do with them? Canadian government is sending money to Africa to help their youth employment. Meanwhile, here in Canada, youth employment is experiencing a significant increase, reaching near decade highs in some months. Are we going to have to ask for money soon, or what? Where are we going to ask for help?
Personal trainer, you know, sort out your own home, I think, before others. And another interesting thing about FINCA is when you're thinking about NGOs, usually they want to keep 35% or below for their spending ratio. So all the money coming in, you want to spend 35 cents on operating costs and have the rest go to the actual cause. FINCA has a 62% spending ratio. So 62 cents on the dollar is going to operating costs and not even directly to these causes that we're funding.
Imagine if you look at many of these NGOs, you're going to find that number might even be higher. We just talked about that yesterday with that fire aid money. None of it. People thought they were donating $100 million, thought they were donating to the fire victims. None of it is going to the fire victims.
And again, it's, I think, spend in other countries when our country
and that's not the territory. None of it. And this is a sad story. The Canadian girl that was allegedly killed by her father in New York was drowned. A preliminary autopsy has shown that 9-year-old Montreal girl allegedly killed by her father in New York was drowned. It was found that Melina Fratellin died of asphyxiation due to drowning, and her death was a homicide, but the results will need to be confirmed by further lab testing. Her father has been charged with second-degree murder and concealment of a human corpse. Sad story.
Condolences to the family.
More big court cases, decisions coming down, and this is that judge is set to deliver ruling after that turbulent sexual assault trial of 5 hockey players. And these Ontario Supreme Court Justice Maria Carokia is expected to deliver a decision Thursday in the trial of Michael McLeod, Carter Hart, Alex Formenton, Dylan Dubé, and Callan Foote. The 5 hockey players are accused of sexual assault after an open bar gala hosted by Hockey Canada in London, Ontario in June 2018. So, so that's that decision. That's a long-awaited decision as well. Mm-hmm. And then we on our Bill C-18 section that we like to talk about. More and more people calling for the defunding of the CBC, and this is an op-ed that's run in the Toronto Sun that says that Canadians are not watching the bloated network, and then they need to start looking at defunding it over the past 10 years.
Yeah, 95% of Canadians aren't even tuning into the CBC, according to this. So
yeah, they have a very small audience, and you can tell the ones that watch the show.
They get $1.4 billion, though.
They actually got a raise. It's 1.5 now.
Oh.
So, they got that raise, and what did they do with that raise as soon as they got it? Gave the executives a raise. Executives, so they got record raises. So we talked about that yesterday. And there's another piece here after the Travis story when he was he resigned, and they said he didn't even resign. Here's another ex-CBC journalist spilling the tea on his working for the public broadcaster. It says, woke bosses killed real journalism, censored dissent, and pushed political agenda. Really? Hard to tell most of the time, right? All happening on your dime. It's time to defund. And yeah, they continue to give themselves raises. And
yeah, I'm interested to hear more specific stories of what's been suppressed over the last few years. More and more to come out in the coming weeks, I'd assume.
Well, we look at during the election, they definitely were championing. I mean, I guess you could argue that that they were protecting their own jobs, because one said he was going to defund the CBC, the other one said he was going to give it a raise. So
well, yeah, there's definitely some motivations there. Some pretty good
Clearly,
motivations.
Stop funding all media outlets, and free the media, and stop government intervention.
Free press is
the cornerstone of democracy.
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly. And then we're going to kick it off first here, and we'll come back to this. Donald Trump made a massive deal with Japan, and that's the first one, the largest deal ever made. Of course, he always says that, right? He's always says everything's the largest and the best ever, right? So Japan will invest, at his direction, $550 billion in the United States and receive 90% of, and they get 90% of the profits. And the deal will create hundreds of thousands of jobs. Again, he goes on and on and on. Japan will pay reciprocal tariffs, though, to the United States of 15%. So there you go. And it also gets access to the Japanese market. So we got to also remember that, I mean, they do have a lot of leverage with Japan because they offer the protection of the U.S. military. And Japan is parked right next to China. So, and they're not very friendly with each other. So, so there is a lot more to that story than meets the eye. But we also take a lot of their protection from the American military.
Well, and another thing to that story is that Japan wanted our oil.
They did. And here's the deal right here. Dan McTeague puts out, a former Liberal MP, cabinet minister actually, says, well, Canadians washed away any chance of such deals of voting 4 times to suppress the development of LNG projects. Japan came hat in hand. We talked about this many times. Me and Ian talk about it all the time, how the Japanese were here begging, the Germans were begging, and Koreans were begging, and we said, or Trudeau said, no business case. And then it turns out, we'll play this clip here from the President of the United States.
And I said to the Japanese trade representatives, and these were the top people, we concluded the one deal, Doug, and now we're going to conclude another one because they're forming a joint venture with us in Alaska, as you know, for the LNG. So I said, we'll all do that together with Chris. Is Chris here? I don't know. Chris, right? If you could set that up, Doug, it would be great. But they're all set to make that deal now, so I think it's good. This was really the one they had to make, and we're going to make a deal with Japan.
There you go. That was our deal. That was clearly our deal. And missed opportunity. And then another deal. And this one here is, again, related to China. Trump just did a deal with the Philippines. Zero tariff trade deal. Zero tariffs on U.S. exports and 19% tariffs on theirs. So he's making deals. It's just amazing how he's getting these deals done.
Well,
and putting U.S. missiles.
That's what I was going to say. You know, I can't deny Trump's economic policy, but his foreign policy is a bit terrifying. The Philippines is always going to be more important to China than it is to the States, just like Ukraine will be to Russia. And putting missiles on the Philippines, it's China's doorstep. What happened when Russia tried to put them in Cuba? To me, this particular part of the deal is worrying.
I'm sure the Philippines were begging for it as well, though, because they are worried about the Chinese as well. So there you go. And then the tariff policies, and we have CNN here. Let's play this clip here from CNN.
I think Republicans should respond to it based on the facts. And if you look at the facts of what's happening here and what happened earlier on, there was a lot of consternation, a lot of noise being created around tariffs because it's something that our presidents of the United States haven't had as far as their economic agenda. Donald Trump has, and all of the gloom and doom that was predicted as far as the tariffs are concerned, they have not been realized. So I think that you've seen what the markets are saying. You know, you have the great numbers that you just were talking about here. Until people actually feel the impact of whatever this gloom and doom scenario is, that's when it'll probably hurt Donald Trump. But at this point, Donald Trump's tariff policy seems to be working. And I think it's very difficult for Democrats to actually give him credit for that. Talk about what the facts are, and the facts are it's working.
The pain hasn't been, you said the pain hasn't been realized yet. And the timing of when that's really going to start hitting consumers could be a real problem depending on when it is and how close you get to a midterm election.
There you go. Stock markets, and we'll talk about it later. The markets are all at all-time highs, and so, I mean, they're reaping lots of benefits from that. And then the third round of peace talks are happening right now in Turkey. Turkey's facilitating some of these talks. Everyone's got a little clip here. I mean, it's not much. We can play the clip while we talk, but so that third round of talks, and that's they're just entering.
And they haven't had any talks for 7 weeks, so it's exciting that they're back at the table.
But there is that deadline that Trump has put on Russia there, right? So he's going to increase the sanctions on Russia if they don't get a deal done. So let's see if that pressure on Russia will help get a deal done.
He's also pledged more weapons to Ukraine. So
there's some massive protests going on in Ukraine right now too. So if you go on there, you can find it. It's not on mainstream media, but there's a lot of stuff out there showing massive protests taking place in Kiev right now as well.
Well, it's an unwinnable war, so.
And then this came out here, breaking news. It was in 5 Things here on Kelowna Now. You can go to 5 Things. We put it out every morning. Transgender women will no longer be eligible to compete for the United States in the Olympic or Paralympic Games in women's categories, and that's a policy change from the U.S. Olympic and Paralympic Committee. And so that is causing a lot of stir in some of the more left-leaning liberal media outlets. So there you go. And then this one here, again, is CNN talking about you know, like, again, the left-leaning media, CNN and that, talking about how these Trump's tariffs have done all these things. And listen to this, and then you just make your own judgment.
Screenshot of Kevin O'Leary's great pause.
There you go.
3 years from now, I think Trump has eroded global trust in the American economy and American deal-making.
You mean the all-time high market ever in history?
It's high because they don't believe.
The all-time high?
They think Trump is going to chicken out.
Never been higher. Never been worth more. Never been more successful. Never.
When the
it's eroded that trust. All-time high. Today at 4:30 in history. Never worth more. What are you talking about?
Well, look. Let's see what happens on August 1st when he announces
the American
up to 50.
You know, this rhetoric that comes out is just like, you know, like, you can't argue. Again, Canadians investing more money in the United States. Mark Carney himself investing more money in the United States. So this narrative that the United States is going to fall apart seems to be just like nonsense.
Well, at this point, the numbers are showing trending up.
There you go. And then Trump also pulls the U.S. out of UNESCO and DEI policies, pro-Palestinian and pro-China tilt. So again, this is Brian Lilly for the Toronto Star saying he's been calling for Canada to drop funding to force reform of several UN agencies for years. And you know, Trump also pulled, we talked about it yesterday, pulled the United States out of the WHO as well, but Canada did not do that. So.
It's an interesting trend we're seeing globally, more nationalist.
Yeah, and this is a big thing here. This is happening all over the place. We're seeing a lot of this, Obama, Hillary Clinton stuff. Hillary Clinton, and this is, you know, a lot of people saying that you know, the release of some of the documents from Tulsi Gabbard, from the DNI. So there you go.
Well, depending on how this story goes, this is one of the largest stories of corruption I've seen in my lifetime.
They say it's going to make Watergate look like Teagate. So we'll see where it goes. But lots of, you know, I don't know where this is going to go. It's you know, Tulsi Gabbard says she's going to release more documents today, I think it is. So we'll see.
Maybe we'll follow that story closer tomorrow.
Barack Obama actually came out and replied on this and said it's, you know, like, it's a bunch of nonsense. And then we watched a little bit of Hunter Biden there, he's actually going on anywhere, and he's just talking, and then I think every second word the guy uses the F, right?
Yeah, he doesn't. He seems to me like he might be a bit off the wagon.
He also talked. I watched him on a show explaining the benefits kind of crack cocaine and how addictive crack cocaine is and how it's better than cocaine.
The upswing, the silver linings.
Just like,
I guess it's cheaper, right? So
I have no idea. I don't have no idea. No idea. And then this story you put in here, and this is a journalist, and I'll let you explain this. A journalist that says that he preferred death over this life, hungry and exhausted.
Well, at this point in Gaza, we're at a tipping point. People are starting to starve to death en masse, and the American Free Press has 10 people associated with them. I'm not sure if they're American journalists, all of them, but 10 who are working for them. And this is the first time in its history that we are seeing 10 journalists that are about to starve to death. If no aid gets into Gaza, like, it's unheard of. We haven't had journalists starve ever. They die in war zones usually due to violence, but to have them actually starving to the point where they can no longer report. And the sad thing about this is that there is aid right outside, ready to come in. If Israel would let it in, we could stop this pretty quickly, and the world is now out calling for it. We can't ignore it any longer.
We did that story yesterday, and that was a bunch of nations calling for aid to get in there and for
finally,
a ceasefire.
But it's kind of like Canada. It took this threat from the States for us to come together. Is it taking journalists starving to death for us to finally say this is enough?
Let's move on to BC news. And BC inks that deal. As Premier Eby inks a deal with Manitoba and Yukon a day after the the big deal there. And I say that is the big deal between on Ontario, Alberta, and Saskatchewan. But BC did sign 2 internal trade agreements with Canadian jurisdictions to boost trade and mobility, and that's mainly mobility to move people between provinces, right? And the statement says the deal was signed with Manitoba Premier's Wab Canoe. It includes measures to increase mobility of regulated workers and professionals between the 2 provinces and allowing more direct alcohol sales between Manitoba and BC. I mean, it seems like, alcohol seems to be such a small, insignificant thing to me, but...
Still, these are exciting policies, but like I said, it's sad that it took this to get us cooperating.
Why wasn't it there before? Like, if we're in one country, like,
Precisely.
why do we have restrictions on moving liquor from one province to the other?
And
doesn't
with
make
this
any sense,
healthcare
right?
crisis too, why do we have all these restrictions about healthcare workers moving one province to the other?
Yeah, my daughter's a nurse and she has to get a license in BC and Alberta to practice in
And
both.
a great cost to themselves.
Yeah. They have to pay double the licensing fee every year. And then this one here is David Eby adding more debt, and this is just a pictograph here of the orange is the NDP debt, and then the Social Credit and BC Liberals, right? So we seem to be ramping up there at the end there, and again, we're chasing away investment.
The derivative there, the slope, just whoop.
Yeah, hockey stick moment. Really good show I did yesterday with Renee Merrifield, former MLA for the BC Liberals. Really good show. Lots of people watched it already. Go through and watch that, and talks about the giant sucking sound of capital leaving British Columbia. And you remember that promise that Eby promised British Columbians, that $1,000 if you elected him back. And did you get your $1,000? No, nobody got it. He said that investment capital is fleeing BC, so he can't give it to you.
Why is it fleeing, David?
Because of the policies. Anyway, it's a circular calculation, I guess. But here it is, Harman Bangu. We've had him on the show as well. Harman Bangu, MLA, for a Conservative MLA, said, this is a reaction to Alan Mackle. He said, I was spending time off this summer sipping wine with some wonderful BC wines on a beautiful Gulf Island. According to Trump, he's mean and nasty. So again, the NDP and the Liberals seem to always just want to do rhetoric around Trump instead of just finding solutions and getting people to invest in Canada and British Columbia. And he said, must be nice to sip BC wine on a coastline when most Canadians, or most British Columbians can't even afford gas or groceries or rent. Champagne socialists brag about a good life while working families fall further behind. And I did that interview yesterday with MNP. 3 in 5 British Columbians are worried they can't even pay their debt. And they're putting their lives on hold because they can't afford basic things. They're swamped with debt, and they're worried about their job future and a whole bunch of things. And here we are, talking nonsense and trade rhetoric, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's quite tone deaf.
There you go. Okanagan Lake remains the deadliest in BC, and it's not even close, right? I interviewed actually one of the people on the last year on that. You can go find it. Obviously it's one of the bigger lakes as well, and it's an attraction for people to come to because of the weather. And so again, when you're out on the water, drinking,
that's what I was
boating,
just about to say.
You know what I mean?
I think the drinking adds to our deaths, but in the last 10 years, we've had 29, and the next largest death count for a lake in BC is 12, so not necessarily a record you want.
Not a record to be proud of, but again, it is a large lake, and it does attract a lot of people, right? And then alcohol is usually linked to a lot of these things, and boat safety too, and life jackets and all those types of things, right? So Let's move on to the markets. And the markets this morning, again, everything's near record highs. Here we have the Dow is up about 371 points. The board is almost all green again. And the only thing that's down, I think, is the global gold index. Gold's off a little bit this morning. Gold, had taken a little bit of a run yesterday, but gold is still hanging on to that $3,400 mark in US dollars and about $4,600 in Canadian dollars. So there you go, just under now this morning. It's actually down about $43 in US funds, 3388. So just a little underneath there. So in that $3,300 to $3,400 bouncing around. And Bitcoin, in near record territories too at 118,000. And here it is, breaking. 170-year-old financial giant Western Union says it will support Bitcoin and crypto. And another news story. Let's play this small clip here.
Wind in the sails.
What's the rollout looking like for Western Union on that front?
Well, we're already innovating in several places in the world on moving money and settling. So both in South America and in Africa, we are innovating our settlement processes to move money quicker and to more easily convert into local currency in partnerships with some of the infrastructure companies you've had on this show. So we are also exploring other partnerships with people who want on-ramps and off-ramps in different parts of the world on how we could enable Western Union's funds in and funds out to enable people to purchase and sell stablecoins. Finally, we're investigating how we might offer stablecoin products in our digital wallets to our customers around the world, again, in partnerships with many of the companies that you've talked to over the course of the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, wind in the sails. You just said it, wind in the sails.
What
and
do
it
you
just
think
seems to
with
be.
all these mainstream, I guess you'd say, financial institutions picking up Bitcoin? What do you think that's going to do for the whole decentralized thing? Is it going to become more trackable, or?
Yeah, likely there'll be more regulations as more and more institutions get involved. There'll be more regulations on it and stuff. But it definitely puts in a very strong foundation for Bitcoin. A lot of people, a lot of corporations now buying Bitcoin too. Lots of talk. I mean, we almost do a story a day on the Bitcoin adoption, right? Oil this morning, again at the West Texas Intermediate at 65.22, just basically flat. Western Canadian Select selling at that massive discount at 52.96, and it's off about 64 cents this morning too. So there you go. Canadian dollar just hanging in there too. Not much movement there. They're waiting for a trade deal or no trade deal. Waiting for something. We're on to our technology and transportation section, and this we've been talking about on the show every day almost. Drop the EV mandate and allow people to choose. And here's a clip here from the automobile associations here. Listen, they're going to say, they're talking to CBC. Here you go.
Brian Kingston, your point that it's up to government to help find a way to make things competitive. Like we saw General Motors recently announced $4 billion to invest in expansion in the U.S., partly because of the tariffs, right? So this speaks to the challenge that exists there. What can Mark Carney and the premiers do to offset something like this?
Well, the most important thing right now is to get rid of the federal EV mandate, which I know we've talked about a few times, but this is having a direct impact on the industry today. Auto manufacturers that build cars here that employ Canadians are being forced to buy credits, to restrict their sale of gas-powered vehicles in this country, all to hit arbitrary sales targets. We should not be inflicting that sort of damage on the industry when we're dealing with a much bigger challenge, which is this tariff situation and the threat that the Americans are posing.
But if the EV mandate goes away and the tariff persists, there's still a competitive disadvantage there, right?
Absolutely. And the reality is no amount of government support will offset access to the world's largest automotive market. You know, there is no such thing as diversifying our industry away to other markets. We have to find some sort of mutually beneficial solution to this ongoing tariff challenge so that the industry can continue to thrive. If we don't have that, the case for building in Canada becomes extremely challenging.
So
it's a no-brainer. It's like I don't understand it. Like it's self-inflicted. It's self-inflicted damage. We've heard from GM, we've heard from Ford, we've heard from Stellantis, we've heard from they invested billions of dollars in that Honda plant, that EV plant, and Honda said, yeah, we're going to pause that, like a 2-year pause or a zero, like forever pause. What is? I mean, Honda doesn't make a lot of EVs either. So,
well, and the thing with these EV mandate numbers, when you look into them, they're fantastical. You're not going to be able to hit them anyways. So.
And I'm a big believer in EVs. I drive a Tesla, but it doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense for everybody, and it doesn't make sense for Canada. If you want an auto sector in Canada, you need to dump this mandate
beyond
like now.
Making sense, I don't think it's even possible.
But I think the Liberals have a tough time by saying they were wrong. They have a tough time saying they're wrong about Bill C-18. They have a tough time saying they're wrong about this EV mandate. And here's Melanie Jolie. She says the only way the auto sector can meet the Fed's 20% EV mandate for 2026 would be to cut production. This is Laurie Goldstein saying that. Would be cut production of 1 million internal combustion engines, which would be madness. And so Jolie says they're in talks with the EV sales mandates. In talks. Like, just scrap it. Just absolutely get rid of it. Admit you're wrong. Just say it. Just say it out loud. You're wrong. And then move on, Jolie.
Another lovely blazer.
Another lovely blazer, another photo op, and not a lot of substance, right? I mean, the world is telling you what's going on. And here it is, J.P. Morgan, a lot of analysts getting on the Tesla train here, and Tesla reporting earnings today as well. J.P. Morgan actually went and tested that robotaxi in Austin and called it solid and safe. After a day of use, they believe if the safety data holds up, robotaxi could help Tesla boost new car prices, because the car will become more useful if it is used as a robotaxi. Because most people's cars are used about like less than 10% of the time, right? Drive yourself to work, get groceries, different things. But a robotaxi would actually put cars to work for you, right? So Tesla reporting earnings today. So see what happens in this is another Elon Musk company. SpaceX competitors increasing their launch rates, but SpaceX is the anomaly in that matrix. SpaceX launches over 90% of all the Earth's payload mass to orbit this year. And that's including countries like China and everything. SpaceX is the leader in spaceflight.
Space exploration. Yeah.
There you go. And then, again, he's the one that the Liberals government has decided to pick a fight with, and label him as a Nazi and different things here. And then Doug Ford canceled the Starlink contract and all that stuff. Just ridiculous. We're picking fights with some of the world leaders in technology, and technology is really all that matters at this point.
And we're picking fights while slowly making little deals, like the Rogers one. Just don't really scream about it.
Yeah, I mean, that deal was going on for a while, and Rogers did make a deal, and this is the same thing. This is the T-Mobile deal, which is similar. Rogers is making the same deal. We're going to play a little clip here on this. Elon Musk retweeted it, right? And this solves dead zones with cells, because if you drive to Calgary or Vancouver and you get cell coverage for what? 1/10 of the time?
Well, even I think TELUS in the Okanagan, are you getting great cell coverage in Upper
Sometimes
Mission?
in this building, it's tough to get coverage.
Yeah, exactly. I would not mind some Starlink.
There you go. Let's play the small clip here from.
I'm headed to one of the most remote towns in the lower 48. There's no cell towers where I'm going, which means no bars from any carrier. T-Mobile's C-Satellite just changed all of that. T-Mobile has over 600 satellites that connect directly to your phone. So now when you're in a place with no cell towers, your phone just automatically switches to T-Satellite. There's no apps, there's no settings, there's no waving your phone to the sky. T-Satellite works right now with millions of messages already sent. Sign up for T-Satellite today.
T-Satellite _ Starlink. There you go. And then this is, again, this is showing you the power of computing that Grok is using with, and this shows you the exaflops that are being used by XAI here.
I like
20,000 exaflops, right?
I really like that measure, exaflops.
Exaflops, there you go.
What is that, power?
That's compute power, I think.
Compute power, exaflops.
There you go. You can look at that chart, just stare at it, and then do what you want. And then this is the Mike Rowe. Mike Rowe is famous for that show he had there and all those dirty jobs and whatever. I think it's a dirty job show. But he says we're entering the golden age of plumbing, steam fitting, pipe fitting, all the trades and people that work with when they're working with their hands as opposed to working with computers. So the jobs that the AI is coming after are the ones where you're sitting in front of your computer, not necessarily the ones that where you're actually working with your hands. And I mean, you know that as well, right?
Yeah,
so
it's creating also jobs in the power, the electrical. Yeah, there's going to be lots of trades coming through.
Yeah, for sure. So electricians. Probably going to be making money.
I've seen it's the white collar jobs that are at risk. Not the blue collar.
Anything where you're sitting in front of your computer is literally likely at risk for AI, whereas anything that you're actually out in the field and doing work.
Yeah, robotics is proving to be harder than The artificial intelligence.
And then, countries like Canada and then the EU, they don't seem to want to invest in AI so much, but they do want to regulate it. And Meta just said to EU, I don't think so. Just like Meta said to Canada on Bill C-18, not paying, not interested. And then we did that interview with Talib Nourman there, the Liberal MP, and he said that Canada's ready to negotiate with Meta. Meta's already told them they're not interested in negotiating. They're not interested in negotiating on that. So you basically punished Canadians again with your virtue signaling and nonsense again. Meta's not going to negotiate.
Strangled independent news within the country.
Yeah, and then they try to blame it on Meta when it's clearly what they did. Meta actually, again, for us, it was a symbiotic relationship. We willingly put our news on Meta's platforms in exchange for the traffic that they drove for us. Over half the traffic came from Meta. We did that. Meta stole nothing. Meta stole nothing from anybody, from CBC, CTV. They steal nothing. They put their content there willingly. And then you tell Meta they have to pay for it. Meta said in those talks, they should pay us. We're sending them traffic.
It was a symbiotic relationship for sure.
Yeah. And then, it's the Liberal government went after him. In our health section, and I watched this podcast, it's a really interesting podcast. One of the couple of things that we talk about here. This Steve Bartlett had the world's top critical. You ever watch his
Dire to CEO?
Dire to CEO. Really good stuff. He gets some really good interviews there. But he had Dr. Roger Schultz on there, and he revealed mind-blowing secrets about sunlight, vitamin T, and health. Sunlight. You're told that you're not supposed to go out in the sun. Sun is one of our
sunlight and exercise, free things you can do.
Saunas too. But sunlight, you think about that, what do plants need?
Sunlight.
Yeah. So growing organisms could use some sunlight. So maybe go listen to that. Dire CEO, that's a good one to subscribe to on YouTube there if you're looking for somebody to listen to. He's really good.
Yeah. Well, and what were the other big ones? Sleep?
Oh, you have to go. Yeah, sleep and nutrition, all the things. You have to go listen. But nutrition is obviously huge, right? Nutrition is absolutely monstrous, right?
And nutrition is huge. There's cases of scurvy last year in Canada, right?
So eating whole foods,
grocery costs.
Eating whole foods is the less ingredients in whatever you're eating, the better. Farm to table, and here we go. Elon Musk, farm to table, and his new diner. I got to go to this diner. That'll be cool. Actually, so farm to table there for Elon Musk's new diner. So getting a lot of airplay there, and he says he's going to make more of these diners. When do we get one in Canada?
You got to go to California to go now, yeah.
Yeah, LA. I think one's going to Starbase. I think I'll go to the Starbase one in
Texas.
Texas, there. Starbase is the name of a town, actually, right?
Mm-hmm.
There you go.
It's kind of like one of those campuses, right?
Yeah, that's right. We're into our Fool of the Day and our series section, and here it is. The old O.J. Simpson chase, and here we got the white Bronco. Who's driving the white Bronco?
Obama. As I said, I've got to do more research into this. See what.
That's Barack Obama driving the white Bronco, and there's Trump in the lead police car.
I don't think there's any denying that there was some form of collusion between the media and the Democrats. There's no denying that, but we'll see if this is an accurate meme.
And then Biden's presidency began with denying the existence of Hunter's laptop and ended with pardoning Hunter for what was on the laptop.
Yeah,
there's some irony there, right?
Yeah, I think this story showed us how journalism is changing since 2016. This is a story that doesn't get enough traction and didn't get enough traction because it was suppressed. And
willingly suppressed.
Suppressed,
and that's what we get with the CBC and the CTV too, right? They're biased reporting. It's not helping Canadians. And who pays the salaries of CBC?
We have the
Canadians. Are they the voice of Canadians? Or are they voice of select Canadians?
Select Canadians.
There you
go. Even for this story,
maybe the select should pay.
Social media, there's collusion between the government, American government, and social media with this one.
You know what they should do for media? If you want to fund it, is they should do no different than taxes. Like you want to fund schools, so you can pick if you want to fund Catholic or regular schools, public. Yeah. And they should do the same thing if you want to fund local journalism or CBC, and let Canadians choose who they want to fund. There's an idea that let us choose, because it's our tax dollars that are going out there, so let Canadians choose what they would like to fund.
Not a bad idea.
I guarantee you that CBC will not like the answer.
Not a bad idea.
And then if you think there's a lot of people suffer, the Toronto Maple Leafs suffer because they say it's like a long time. That's the worst team ever. There is a team that's worse than the Maple Leafs, so.
Well, we're getting a big reshuffle in the fall, supposedly, so maybe we can create a winning team.
There you go.
Fingers crossed.
And then the last one here, they've uncovered my conflicts of interest, and then they said, "Yep, bring out PP's security clearance."
Every time I've been saying $1 billion on the show, this is $1 billion.
$1 billion. There you go. There you go. Yeah, that's the show for today. Hope you enjoyed it. We're back tomorrow morning, Thursday, and then we're back Friday morning as well, 9 a.m. Every weekday morning, we're here.
And Ian's back on Monday.
Ian's back on Monday.
Will the deal be here?
Will the deal be here?
Ian will be here, but will the deal be here?
Will the deal be here? Yeah, well, there's a lot of stuff in the air. It'll be interesting. Tomorrow we'll talk about what happened with the hockey players. And then I don't think we'll have an answer on the Tamara Litch and Chris Barber thing, though. I think that'll be on Friday morning.
Yeah, they were hearing more from them tomorrow, they said, so.
Yeah, so I mean, it'll be interesting to see what justice looks like for noise mischief. And Tamara's already served some time. She served 49 days in jail already. Tamara has. So.
Well, and we see such light penalties being handed out for violent crimes, which is the real juxtaposition to me. Is there's just no real.
I think a lot of Canadians are going to watch this and see what justice means in Canada. And I know that there's a bunch of people with the elbows up that are screaming to put them away for life. But I think that, again, go watch that interview with John Carpe, because we talked about the TD Bank and then the RCMP having to turn over records for freezing bank accounts. And how did the banks agree to do that so easily as well, too? I mean, they need to be called out on that as well.
Some accountability.
There you go. That's our show for today. We do thank you for watching Now Media, and we're back tomorrow morning at 9 a.m.
We don't just report the news. We live here too. We're your neighbors, bringing you stories that matter to all of us. No government funding, no outside influence. Kelowna Now, local, independent. News you can trust.